It's recently come to my attention that some of you don't understand how broken the initiative is. Many of you are Commander players watching my channel, and yes, you watch some of the constructed content I make, but I wanted to use this video to highlight to you why Commander design shouldn't be influencing constructed design in any way. We shouldn't have any crossover. And in a world of universes beyond where we are designing for all sets, we have Commander cards that are alongside standard cards, we inevitably will get a slip like this. Now, to be fair, the initiative was designed solely for Commander. It was a multiplayer function that honestly is largely successful in my opinion when it comes to the multiplayer side of things. Yes, there are ways to break it, but even cards like the Monarch Initiators are largely, in my opinion, great in terms of initiating combat, promoting politics in a multiplayer environment. But when it comes to 1v1 constructed, it's one of the most broken designs ever made, up there with Dredge and Storm, because it doesn't take into mind the consistency and the mana acceleration that exists in Eternal Magic. And it's why, again, I wanted to highlight why we cannot let Commander design cross over, and we need to be very careful about how we are designing for all formats these days, especially when it comes to universes beyond, wanting to sell sets and just match the hype set after set. Just do what we must do to please the shareholders, and inevitably we will, as I mentioned, get a slip like the initiative. Now, the initiative itself comes from the Undercity, which is the dungeon, and it says whenever one or more creatures a player controls deals combat damage to you, that player takes the initiative, but you initially need to play a creature and or a card that gives either player the initiative, whether it's you or your opponent plays one, and then when you deal combat damage to each other, you take the initiative. Then whenever you take the initiative and at the beginning of your upkeep, so you get a free trigger every time, you don't need to pay costs. You can just, if nothing happens, your opponents don't attack you, you don't attack them. If you have the initiative, you will continue to get free value without doing anything, just passing the turn. You venture through the Undercity. So then the Undercity itself is my favorite board game mechanic in our TCG, the dungeon itself. And with all this value, there is a little bit of quote unquote ramp, some tutoring, some buffs to creatures, some combat mechanics, a literal win condition built in for free. You have card draw, and you have tutoring abilities that hyper synergize with the Undercity itself. Again, in a world where you have consistency, fast mana at a moment's notice, and a bunch of ways to get the initiative, it's no surprise that a Commander mechanic where you are designing around finding one version of a card at a time is not going to balance in a world where you can have 4 copies of some of the more powerful initiative cards out there. Now, the initiative does exist in the Pauper format, but it tends to be the worst versions of those cards, the cards that are generally more expensive. The cheaper versions of those initiative cards do not exist in Pauper because they're banned out. But when it comes to constructed, why is the initiative broken for those Commander players or those players that have never played against it? And how do we inform, how do we kind of keep this in mind when it comes to designing future mechanics like this for constructed formats or ones that affect constructed formats? Firstly, it is an imbalance. So when it comes to the initiative itself, there's an imbalance in the way both players are able to take advantage of this. So if you are a non-initiative deck, you are not built to take advantage of this initiative and keep the initiative. If you were to take the initiative from your opponent, let's say you're playing something like a Psychic Frog and you take the initiative from your legacy 4-color initiative player, we'll go over a deck list later. Sure, you take the initiative, you go through the first mode of the Undercity, and you grab yourself a basic. In the legacy format, that basic means all but nothing, right? Yes, you've thinned your deck, but it doesn't pitch to Force of Will, Force of Negation. Heck, it's even worse because if you're using Daze, you return another land to your hand. So it's not even that great. But you get that secret basic mode. You might even go to the next version, go to the Lost Well. Maybe you forge and boost your Psychic Frog even further. Heck, I am mentioning Legacy here, but the fact that Psychic Frog is banned is not important here. It's not. You have an evasive creature, what I'm trying to highlight, and you take the initiative from your opponent. Okay, great. The problem is, whenever you play a card that has the initiative, so let's say something like Ravenloft Adventurer, which is behind my camera, it says when it enters the battlefield, you gain the initiative. The vast majority of initiative enablers enter the battlefield and give you the initiative. That means no matter what your opponent does, you are better equipped to take advantage of this because you have more initiative cards in terms of access. Yes, your opponent can counter them, but you can just continue to play more. You can continue to get evasive and attack underneath your opponent, because now with your opponent having the initiative, they now have to take their threats and become defensive. They can't leave you an opening to take back the initiative, because then you could potentially go through the initiative or 2 rooms of the initiative on your turn, 3 rooms of the initiative if you have enough mana based on the deck list these days. And so the imbalance initially is vast, because your opponents cannot take advantage of the initiative to the level you can, because your goal is to get through as deep in the dungeon as possible and continue through the dungeon over and over again, whereas your opponent might likely only get through 1 or 2 modes while you keep stealing it back from them. Next up is going to be the cost of these cards. So specifically, when it comes to the initiative in Commander versus Constructed, in the Commander environment, there is a cost such as only having 1 copy of that card, right? So that's the initial bit. And in Commander, you don't have the consistency to necessarily find the kind of high mana value stuff, or at least the way to ramp into it as much as possible. So you're not gonna get your Ancient Tombs out there, your Lotus Petals, as consistently as a Constructed player who can play 4 Ancient Tombs in their deck, 4 Simian Spirit Guides in their deck, 4 Elvish Spirit Guides if you're getting real spicy with it. So they are able to then get out these cards much faster than in a Commander environment, where turn 1 initiative, turbo initiative, is very much possible when it comes to eternal formats. And that's where something like Passageway Seer becomes relevant, because yes, it's 4 mana, it's 1 and 3, and that's why in my Obeka deck I have a crap ton of 2 mana ramp spells, because I want to go land, ramp spell, then go land on my turn 3 plus the ramp spell, play a 4 mana initiative maker. So in my Obeka extra upkeeps decks, I make sure the consistency of that deck revolves, I should say, around getting out a turn 4 initiative card on turn 3 or as soon as possible. And that is what the deck does, and that is what it does very well, at least at a bracket 3 environment. And so the mana cost with that, when it comes to consistency, is very different when you have 4 copies of Ancient Tomb, 4 copies of Lotus Petal, 4 copies of Simian Spirit Guide. You are able to turbo out really powerful initiative cards and start getting that value immediately. Immediately as you start the initiative, you're going to get your basic land out, and then the turn after that, you're going to attack, keep the initiative. You know, you already got your upkeep trigger by going back to your turn. Your opponent likely doesn't have a threat if you can turn 1 out an initiative to at least attack into you, because especially when it comes to Legacy and Vintage, the turn 1 haste creatures aren't that common in the format. You're playing 1 creature at a time, and those creatures have a lot of impact, but they're not taking the initiative, generally speaking. You also have to note that the initiative itself is combat damage. So if your opponent has a lightning bolt or something, that doesn't do anything. You have to take combat damage to take the initiative back. And so that makes that even worse in terms of not only imbalance, but your opponent's ability to pay costs in terms of creatures themselves to then beat you on the initiative. Because not only were you able to turbo out the initiative on your first creature, but chances are you're going to be able to do that on your second creature. So you get your initiative, go back to your upkeep. On your next turn, you get your initiative trigger, you play another creature, get another initiative trigger, and all of a sudden, if we kind of swing back here, 1, 2, 3, you're already at the trap. You've dealt some damage to your opponent, likely, and then you can trap them. They've maybe fetched. All of a sudden, by turn 2, they are at kind of 17, or they've taken 7-ish damage, somewhere in the range of that, 7 to 8 damage. They're at 11 to 12 life, facing down even more card disadvantage, because then you might be going to draw a card to find more initiative creatures or more ways to ramp into them. Then you're going to go thrown into the Dead 3 to create a giant initiative creature that's going to ETB and start the Undercity all over again. You can continue, flicker them through. Obviously, in these versions, you're not flickering them when it comes to Constructed, because the consistency of just having these initiative creatures value over and over and over again is really powerful. You do not need to attack with them at all. You can just keep playing these initiative creatures through counter spells, in the sense of, if your opponent counters them, yes, you can just continue to play more, or you can just play Cavern of Souls and other effects that keeps these creatures kind of uncounterable, and continue your way through this value, go through the trap mode, create mana, create creatures, goad your opponent into attacking you to soft remove them. The initiative does everything when it comes to the Constructed environment. The last thing I want to bring up in terms of how the initiative is imbalanced is the protection that initiative creatures provide. So this is just the actual design of creatures themselves. So Seasoned Dungeoneer, white in 3/4, a 3/4 that says whenever Seasoned Dungeoneer enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, but whenever you attack, target attacking cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard, this by the way is a warrior, gains protection from creatures until the end of turn. So it is just functionally like it can't be blocked. It functionally cannot be blocked. It also explores. You reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand if it's a land, otherwise put a 1/1 counter on it. And then you put that creature, you may put that card back. So you, not only you get card advantage, but some of the creatures that are in this also provide protection. So they work with themselves. They weren't meant to be powered out on turn 1, but imagine you go, you know, turn 1 Lotus Petal, Simian Spirit Guide, Ancient Tomb, power out a turn 1 Seasoned Dungeoneer, and then all of a sudden you got the initiative, you got a 3/4 that's literally unblockable, and it's a fat stat creature. This thing blocks so well. It blocks so well if you needed to. And then you're attacking in, you're getting your initiative. You've probably then gone to the second mode on your upkeep to forge this thing to then make this a 5/6. Now you're attacking in as a 5/6. And then if you play another initiative creature, not only have you dealt 5 damage to them, you then go to the trap mode on turn 3. You've dealt another 5. They're already halfway through their life, and it is simply their turn 2. They've untapped, they've not even untapped once, actually. Technically speaking, they have just played a land and done something. That's it. That is what the initiative does. And so with the imbalance of the fact that your opponents aren't built to take the initiative and keep it, alongside the idea that the costs associated with the initiative aren't balanced per commander versus constructed, along with constructed formats being able to play initiative creatures that have great protection, may have menace, are just able to get in quick. The initiative is extremely unbalanced when it comes to a 1v1 environment where consistency is king, and being aggressive on the ground and creating value is the like at the utmost top thing. You know, it's not commander where you're building a bunch of engines, you're ramping out a bunch. If you can play out a creature like this on turn 1, you have probably fundamentally won the game, because the amount of value that you're going to get in that moment and down the line is so insurmountable. Because not only once does this resolve that your opponent will not be able to continue to counter any of it, remove any of it. Removal and counter magic do not matter at the point after this resolves, because you will just continue to get that initiative value for free. That, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, as you just go through your turns, draw, go, draw, go, draw, go. If your opponent does not threaten combat damage to you, it's not non-combat, combat damage to you, you will not be able to do anything about getting back the initiative and outvaluing your opponent. Now, notably, on March 6, 2023, we had White Plume Adventurer banned, and that was in the Legacy format. We have other kind of initiative creatures banned in Pauper. So there was movement made and recognition made of the kind of power of the initiative deck here. And I wanted to kind of go through this just a little bit here. Since the last episode, this was back in 2023, Legacy metagame has evolved with 2 major archetypes combined. It'll be the large portion. It's going to be Is it Delver and Mono White Initiative. Their combined presence 30% of the field, in addition to removing really strong, so that's expressive iteration. But since the release of Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, the initiative mechanic has had a large impact on the Legacy format and continues to rise in popularity. The current second most popular deck uses fast mana to power out the initiative, gaining an early advantage that's difficult to recover from. To reduce the consistency and speed of the gameplay pattern, they banned White Plume Adventure, which is just, again, a Lotus Petal and a it's just a Lotus Petal and a Ancient Tomb away from being played. A lot easier to manage. If you have a Simian Spirit Guide, you can exile that and manage a Daze, which I imagine was very relevant in a world of Is it Delver. But regardless, you can see movement was made and recognition was had of the power of the initiative. Now, the initiative right now does exist in Legacy. It's a wild deck. Minsc and Boo, by the way, is like actually a broken Magic card. It's very balanced in the sense that, like, yeah, it's not meant to be. We're not banning Minsc and Boo. I'm saying, like, once this resolve, Minsc and Boo, let me know in the comment section down below. But as far as I'm aware, every time Minsc and Boo has resolved against me in a constructed 1v1 environment, this card is so fundamentally messed up in a 1v1 environment. It's crazy how it's not played more. Really cool card, doesn't need to be banned, just very powerful when it lands. You still have Once Upon a Time to search for your cards initially if you need them to. Once Upon a Time also notably grabs Simian Spirit Guide, which is just mana at that point. You got the Elvish Spirit Guide as well that helps you power out the Undermount Adventure, which again just adds mana, right? If you've completed a dungeon, you add 6 mana when you tap this thing. Hello? I've never seen this card. This card is insane. You have the broadside bombardiers to like discard a creature or an artifact and just slam your opponent with that. Like obviously you have a lot of high CMC stuff. You have the Fabled and Mirror Breaker, the Lotus Petals. So this deck is a little bit slower. The problem is the legacy metagame right now is just really broken. You have the Dimir Reanimator deck, which is the single best combo mid-range deck out right now, just reanimating large targets. And a lot of people are talking about banning Entomb and all that stuff. What needs to be banned is a whole different discussion. That's what's going on. This is kind of the result of like a fake metagame. We see combo decks closer at the top. Mystic Forge combo, Sneak and Show, largely combo tempo. Painter is a combo deck that kind of is a mid-range deck right now, but really has an I win button. Oops on Spells, one of the most broken decks in Magic's history at this point. That probably will have something banned out of this. A lot of people talking about Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer both needing to go from this, but the numbers don't speak to how broken Legacy is. All I'm saying is Legacy cannot play a slow game. And Undercity Informer is the reason for that. Balustrade Spy is the reason for that. It forces you to play a faster game. The problem is once you get out the initiative, you're not winning fast. You can beat the blue decks if that resolves, right? Because the value you get is continuous over time. The problem is the blue decks right now aren't necessarily playing like play Delver, flip it, slow tempo game, whatever. They're playing Reanimator, they're playing Broken Aggro, Orcish Bowmasters, all that stuff. Like they have ways to get in, or they just have like I win buttons that are faster than the initiative. So the initiative, yes, you can play it, you can powder it out, it's powerful, but it's a slow win condition. It's a inevitability that unfortunately Legacy doesn't give you the room to gain at this point. It's combo decks and mid-range decks that can beat the combo decks. There's no such thing as a control deck in Legacy right now. The closest one is probably lands. Everything else is genuine. I mean, probably Beanstalk control as well. Everything else is some version of mid-range with a combo finish or a combo deck. That's it. It's just combo decks or mid-range with a combo finish. It's blue-based mid-range with a combo finish, or it's a combo deck. That is the only thing that Legacy can do right now. There's no variety in it. And a lot of people cite that if control decks cannot exist in the metagame, then Legacy is not in a good spot. Again, arguably, these are not control decks, even if they play Force of Will and Daze. Largely, they are protecting some type of overwhelming odds combos, some type of reanimation, and then they can kind of take it from there. So that has largely been my spiel about the initiative itself. I hope that it has provided some information as to why the initiative is always complained about when it comes to constructed environments in Legacy, less so in Vintage, maybe less so in Vintage. Honestly, there is effects there, but Vintage is such a wild thing that I don't really comment on too much due to my lack of experience, but especially when it comes to Pauper and everything, we've seen the power that the Monarch can have in tempo environments. When it comes to commander designs that affect constructed environments, it's a very slippery slope. We need to be careful. And we can see when effects like this that have honestly large success in the commander format, I've raved about on this channel before, that I think all commander decks should include one way to get the initiative, get the monarchy and stuff like that, include mechanics that get your opponents to attack and move around the table. I think these are successful mechanics, but when it comes to their legality in 1v1 environments, we have to be very careful because they lead to absolutely insane environments where metas warp all around them.